to the stage General Jim McConville.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. Thank you. Well, thank you, Steve, for that kind introduction. It's great to be here with you all, and Jim always puts on a great event. And, you know, welcome. And, you know, when I take a look at what's going on around the world, we are stronger when we work together. When we work as a joint force, when we work as a combined force, when we work with our allies and partners and our interagency partners, and we're seeing that happen right now in Europe, and it's playing out on the world stage. And, you know, when I see what our soldiers are doing every single day, I could not be prouder, both here and around the globe. And, you know, when you think about, you know, what we've asked them to do over the last 2 years, and especially our Guard and Reserve forces. Anyone from the Guard and Reserve here? You raise your hands? Okay, thank you. I want to give you a hand because you guys are doing great stuff, you know. And what I see is, you know, we talk a lot about fighting and war fighting in the military, and that's absolutely what we do, but we also ask our soldiers to do a lot of problem solving. And they're doing that around the globe, and particularly in the nation. We see our guardsmen driving buses. They're going into medical facilities and helping them out. And they're just doing some incredible things. And it really makes a difference with what's happening around the nation. And now, you know, a lot of people thought that, hey, what are we doing in Europe? Why have we set the theater in Europe? And we're seeing the value of setting the theater to support our NATO partners and coming together. And we have over 40,000 soldiers right now committed to that mission. 25,000 are permanent, 6,000 are on rotation, and we've deployed 12,000 soldiers over the last couple of weeks. And that includes our four-star commander, General Chris Cavoli, who recently stood up as a four-star, the forward command post of 5th Corps, which we activated in 2020. We have 2 rotational brigades there from the 1st Brigade and for the 1st Infantry and 4th Infantry Divisions. And then we have multiple units deploying. Our 5th Corps is there, our 18th Airborne Corps is there, our 82nd Airborne Division is there, our 1st Infantry Division is there, and brigades from 3rd Infantry Division. In fact, the interesting about the 1st Brigade of the 3rd Infantry Division that we just deployed, they got a note, they're an armored brigade combat team, which is a heavy force. And they got an order, you know, basically to move very, very quickly. And I told my staff I wanted to go see them before they left, and that was the weekend. And they were gone before I could get down there to see them. So it just kind of shows you the readiness of our troops. But more importantly, the work that had been done in Europe to facilitate them arriving and quickly getting into operations. We had pre-positioned stocks there in Armored Brigade combat team that was ready to go. We had an Infantry Brigade combat team that the 82nd could draw on. So all these things made a difference in bringing our Army to where it needs to be. And we have some incredible logisticians under the command of Ed Yealy that are really making things happen. And I think as we take a look at what's going on in Europe and around the world, is for all those logisticians out there, you know, that's where the real professionals are. We can't do our business without great logisticians. You know, our helicopters don't fly, our tanks don't drive, all those type things that we're seeing play out on a world stage, and shows you the value of what we have going forward. The other thing we're seeing is, you know, we've done a lot over many, many years, and I see a lot of retirees here that served in Europe. Cannot underestimate the importance of the strong relationships we have with allies and partners. And I would argue that with NATO, it's stronger than it's ever been, and for good reason. And we're seeing that happen very, very quickly. And, you know, we often get, you know, as Chief Staff of the Army, people say, what's the role of an Army? Is it still relevant? Do we need an Army? And I can say, well, take a look. And we need this capability, and we're seeing that play out, and we're seeing it with a total force. And that makes a difference. And, you know, as far as priorities in the Army, it's still about people, it's still about readiness, and it's still about modernization. And it's not one or the other. A lot of people ask us, okay, what's the, you know, is it going to be end strength? Is it going to be readiness? Is it going to be modernization? And quite frankly, it's all three. And what we're trying to do is optimize each of those variables, if you will, to deliver the best Army we can with the resources we get. And that's what we're doing in putting together. And when I take a look at what's happening, people become so important. And we're in a war for talent in the United States Army. We need the best of America to sign up and serve. And we want their parents to know, and them to know, that the U.S. Army is a pathway to endless possibilities and a pathway to success. And this is a challenging time for all of us in the recruiting business. We used to talk about statistics, and it was 29% of Americans were qualified to come to the military. Now it's 23%. And the other thing that's interesting is 79% of the young men and women that come to the Army have a military family member. And so some people say it's a military family business. We don't want that to be. I'm very, very proud of all, the military kids that serve, but we want it to be an American family business of serving their country. And we offer up everyone to do those type things. And so we're doing a lot in the Army. We recruit soldiers, but we retain families, doing a lot with quality of life. And you take a look at our budget, we're investing in things like housing, we're investing in child development centers, we're investing in quality of life because we think that is extremely important. But at the end of the day, when we talk about readiness, we've got to make sure that our soldiers and our units are ready to go, and I think our soldiers are demonstrating that. Take, for example, the 82nd Airborne Division. Since I've been Chief of Staff of the Army, we have deployed them with no notice or limited notice 4 times over the last 2.5 years. Once to Iraq, when the embassy was threatened, that was a complete no-notice deployment. We brought them up here. They were not employed, but they did come up here. They went into Kabul for HKIA, and now they're in Europe as we speak on another short notice deployment. And it's not just them. It's also the National Guard. We had a brigade from Minnesota, the Red Bulls, who were committed in their state in Minneapolis when there was social unrest. They went right from there and they went to the National Training Center. During COVID, one of the battalion commanders had lost his grocery store in the social unrest. And he still went and served, and then he deployed, and then he found himself, or they found themselves in the Middle East, and they found themselves in Kabul during the evacuation, helping that out. So we're a total force, and we find that is extremely, extremely important. But at the end of the day, we are on a transformational path. And we feel in the Army that we have to do that. We have to transform the Army. We do it every 40 years. I argue we did it in 1940 when General Marshall had my job and got the Army ready for World War II. And what he said was when he had the time, he didn't have the money. And then when he had the money, he didn't have the time. And then we saw the Army transform coming out of Vietnam. And many of you, a lot of industry here, and you take a look at what the Army has used for the last 40 years, it was really the big 5, the Abrams tank, the Bradley fighting vehicle, the Apache helicopter, the Black Hawk, and the Patriot air defense system, and there were others. But each of those systems we've incrementally improved over the last 40 years. And so now it's time in the Army to transform, to bring on new weapon systems. And so our 6 modernization priorities are not changing. They're still in effect. We are going to have long-range precision fires. We are going to have an obsolete manned fighting vehicle. We are going to have future vertical lift. We are developing the network. We are developing air and missile defense. When I talk about air and missile defense, I argue that the unmanned aerial system, and those who are in the business of countering those unmanned aerial systems, is something that we need to put a lot of effort into. I believe that's the most likely, and in some cases, to our tactical forces and many of our civilians and American interests around the world are of great interest. Everyone has access to unmanned aerial systems. They're very easy to make lethal, and we are aggressively going after that capability to make sure that we can counter those systems. And we're still moving out on all our soldier lethality type capabilities. And as Steve said, with our acquisition corps, working together with our operators, working together with our soldiers, partnered with industry, at least from where I sit, having watched this over many, many years, we are moving out on getting systems into our hands of soldiers at the speed of relevance. And as Steve said, we're going to field 24 of our modernization efforts by 23. Now, not everything is going to be completely done, but this is not PowerPoint. These are weapons we can shoot, and I think Neil Thurgood, I saw Neil running around here somewhere, right over there. Neil is going to deliver hypersonics. He's going to deliver mid-range capability, right, by 23. Or you're not leaving, okay? So he's here. We got him on record right there in front of everyone, but we're going to field those. We're going to field PRISM. We're going to field IRC. I see folks involved in those type things. They're going to make those systems happen. And mobile protect fire is going to happen. And, many of these systems are going to come into place, and we find that very, very important. We want to get the initial system in the hands of soldier. And we appreciate what industry's doing, because as our soldiers get on these systems, they're helping us define these systems in a way that we never were able to do before. And it's happening. And we are going to field FARA, we are going to field FLARA, and we are going to field the optionally manned fighting vehicle over the next couple of years. And that is going to happen. And so when we take a look at, what else is big in the Army, it's really, and I think others have talked about Joint All-Domain Command and Control, or JADC2. I think people have mentioned that. I add a C to that, because I think wherever we go, we're going to fight with allies and partners. And as I talk to my fellow chiefs of staff, they are very interested in being with us. In fact, you're going to see a lot of this. They want our equipment. They want to work with us. They want to be able to communicate with us. Our secretary has talked about, a data-centric organization and what we want to do with data, but the ability to pass data very quickly between sensors and command and control systems and shooters is really what we see is the secret to success in the future. And our contribution to that is Project Convergence. And we've done 2 already, one in 2021, and we'll do another one in 22. But during Project Convergence 20, we kind of got the Army's stuff together. We learned to pass data very, very quickly between our systems. This last year, we brought the Joint Force out there, and we saw some exponential progress about being able to pass, again, data between weapon systems and sensors in tens of seconds rather than tens of minutes or tens of hours. And this year coming up, we're going to bring in some of our allies and partners. Some will participate, a lot will observe, and again, we'll bring the team together, and we think this is extremely important to get us all where we're going. And so what I'd like to do is just kind of conclude with where we're going with the Army. The idea that we see that's very, very important is the notion of speed in our systems, range in our systems, convergence of our systems, which gives us the decision dominance we think we need, and that gives us the overmatch that we need. And we must have an Army that's ready today. We saw that. We're deploying it. As it's been said, we're going to war with the Army we have, and I can report to you that it's a very, very good Army, and I'm very, very proud of these soldiers. But we're also got to be ready to go to war in the future. And that's why we must modernize, and that's why we will transform. And with that, I'd like to open up to any questions you may have. Thank you.
Hey, Chief, can I ask one real quick? I know.
Sure.
I want to go to the back there. I thought it is a war on talent. I didn't know those numbers until you mentioned 29% used to be eligible of young Americans that enter the military. Now it's 23%. This is a lot of the defense industrial base. What could they do to help that war on talent, whether it's for the Army, Navy, Air Force, or Marines?
Yeah, one thing that I've asked our soldiers for life, and again, I'd ask all of you to do 2 things for us. And you don't have to be a soldier for life to do this, but I would ask you to do this. Do 2 things: inspire and hire. Inspire other young men and women to serve in some capacity. It may be in the Army, it may be in any service, it may be in government. They won't be dissatisfied that they did that. Inspire them to serve. They'll be very, very proud of that service when they're old and gray, and they're trying to tell their grandkids what they did for their nation, the country, the fact they served. They'll never be able to take that away from them. So I would ask you inspire young men and women to serve. The other thing is hire our vets. When our vets come out, we want them to stay 2, 3, 4, 5 years and then go out into the civilian community and get good jobs and take the talent they have and take the discipline they have and make that happen. One of the things that we have to do is do a better job of exposing young men and women to the military, to the Army. We live in these gated communities now because of security. It's very hard for anyone to get on a military base right now, And so that's not very helpful. And an interesting factoid that we discovered, and it's not something I would think about, but 49% of our recruits come from high schools that have a junior ROTC program. And what's interesting is they're not necessarily in that junior ROTC program, but the fact they've seen someone in a uniform doing something that might look like the military has inspired them to serve in the military. And just to put that in kind of context, only 10% of high schools have JROTC. So what we see, factoid-wise, 79% of the recruits that come in the Army come from military family members, and 49% come from JROTC programs. So we want to open that up. We have great opportunities, certainly in the Army, certainly in the military, and we want to give everyone an opportunity to serve. Yeah.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Susan Hawkins. I'm with Northrop Grumman. You mentioned we were fielding FLRAA and FARA. I see the timeline for FLRAA pretty clearly. Can you share anything right now about the timeline for FARA?
Well, I think, if you want to get into dates, and I'm going to let Mr. Bush take those questions on because I try to keep my act. Where is Doug? Doug's here somewhere. I think he's following me. Okay. All right, he's over there with the mic. He will take the exact dates because I'll give you something that, but here's the thing. What it is we believe, when it comes to Chief Staff of the Army, laying down what the future requirements are. That's one of my legislative responsibilities. We believe that we need a future attack reconnaissance aircraft, okay? And it's going to take some time to do, and we're going through the acquisition and the development process to happen. We are committed to making that happen. Same thing with the future long-range assault aircraft. There's milestones that are coming up. We're down selecting. We're trying to move that very quickly. We're trying to, do the process in a different way of how we're looking at a lot of these processes, starting with characteristics. Trying to get a prototype built. Being able to fly before we buy to make sure that people are very good in PowerPoint. It's amazing what you can do in PowerPoint, but when you actually have to put a rotor on it and some things on it and fly it around, then we get a good idea of what's in the realm of possible, and that's helping us. And then we have soldiers and pilots work with the developers, and we can get some feedback on what we need to do. And as we talk about these systems, the good thing about being the chief, not being involved in the acquisition process, we've been very clear about the type of things we want. We want to go, this far fast. We want to carry this many people. We want it maneuverable at the X. We want to do those type things. And then we can leave it to industry to go ahead and develop what they want to do. But the timeline I see is, I'd like to get it tomorrow, but I think that's going to take a little longer, And, we got to go through the process, and, we're trying to move as quickly as we can with those systems. But, I'm looking at probably 28 to 30 time frame of when those are actually in the hands of the soldier. When I talk 24 and 23, those three are not in that. We see them a little further down the road. But here's the deal. We got the time right now. We don't have a ton of money. We got some time and some money. And what I think our responsibility to do is to provide options for future secretaries and future chiefs. So when something happens and they say they need this capability, we're not starting from a blank piece of paper. It's ready to go. And then let others decide how much and how fast. But decisions we make right now will limit the options that people will have in 24, 25, and 26.
Chief, we got one over here, if that's okay. Another one.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, Ethan Sterenfeld with Inside Defense. I had a question about the IVAS, which
Yeah.
you described recently as the alpha model of the system.
Yeah.
If it's the alpha model, should it be procured in high numbers over the next few years, or should the Army slow procurement?
Well, we're taking a look at, what that, the speed of IVAS is. The interesting thing about IVAS is just how fast it improves. It's being built in a different model. I think that is transformational. When I look at, something like IVAS, I see so much potential in that, because when we take a look at what we can do with that capability is we can train with it, we can rehearse with it, and we can actually work on, do real live missions with that. But the power of being able to bring to commanders and soldiers on the ground what's in front of them, they can be under armor and look through armor with that capability. They know exactly where they're at. It's amazing when you're a soldier, if you know where you're at and know where your fellow soldiers are, and you can see, at day and night with the systems that are in that capability. The fact that you can go into augmented or virtual reality and train on the target that you're actually going to do, and then you can do after-action reports with that and figure out where everyone's weapons were and where the problems were. There's just so many things that I see in the future, and I've used the analogy of the phone. Look at the iPhone. When I use that analogy, especially with younger people, they don't get it because they're going, "What are you talking about? A phone?" The thing that the older people here with gray hair that was on the wall. And you had a dial phone, and the idea that 20 or 30 years ago you'd be talking about taking a picture with your phone, or you'd be navigating with your phone, or you'd be watching movies with a phone. All those type things are what I see with IVAS are going to be transformational. It's just not a better night vision goggle. It's going to give a much greater capability to our troops. And, as far as buying things, what's the speed of procurement? To me, the speed of procurement is how good it is for our troops. What's the difference? It's an alpha model. We want to get the system going, and then we want to quickly bring it up to speed and make it better and better as we go.
And then, thank you. And then, will we also have the bandwidth on the future battlefield for soldiers to use AR on the goggles in real time?
Well, it's if I go back to my 512K computer I had, in grad school. We didn't have, we couldn't imagine the bandwidth we had on a computer. I think that's something we have to look at. We're seeing the bandwidth with. It's interesting when you think about those type of systems. The network becomes really important, and how fast we can move digits and how fast we can move things, and some people will have more bandwidth than others. Maybe the commanders have more access to bandwidth, and it's just like you have a controlled supply rate. We actually do that with ammunition. We say you only get so many of these type things. You may be limited to how much bandwidth you get depending on your position. You may not get any bandwidth. You may be only able to use it in a night vision goggle capability. You may not have access to things, but that's where we're going. And we don't have it all figured out right now. But we're not waiting to have it all figured out to get the requirements perfect. We're going to get in the hands of soldiers. It's better than anything we have right now. We can see where we're going. And I think, we're not waiting 10, 12 years to get to the Bravo model. I think that can happen in 6 months, and then we got to get the procurement process. And Mr. Doug Bush is going to make that all happen. And when he comes up after me, he's going to explain it in detail. So it's going to go really well. Oh. Are you done? I'm looking. I got yellow lights, so okay.
We got
Okay.
Reggie here from BAE. Reggie, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Pat. Okay. Hey, General McConville, good to see you again, sir.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about the Army's role in Europe, the Army's role in Indo-Pacific. What about the Army's role in the Arctic? Can you talk a little bit about that strategy?
Yeah, we just put out an Arctic strategy. We're in the process of taking a look at of that right now. We've certainly always had. We got about 12,000 soldiers in Alaska right now. 2 brigades, a striker brigade, and an airborne brigade. We also have an administrative headquarters. I can envision in the future, operationalizing that headquarters. There's going to be a division, maybe not a full division, but it can be an operational headquarters that's focused on operating in the Arctic. I can see that, Stryker Brigade becoming much more of an Arctic brigade. We kind of look at it right now with, that it has the capability to leave there and to go to other places. But we believe we're going to need that capability, that it's going to be equipped, it's going to be trained to actually fight in that type environment. And so we can see that. There's always the possibility that we could put a multi-domain task force up in Alaska with the capability to provide long-range precision effects and long-range precision fires and even some type of air missile defense, depending on the scenario and the policies that we're taking a look at right now. So I see a lot of things happen in the Arctic. That's a competitive zone. We think we're going to be competing in that, and the Army has a strategy, and that is being kind of developed as we go along. Yeah, one there and one there. Okay. He's right there, and
Hey, sir. Good afternoon. Thanks for coming. Jerry Rigoli from Lockheed Martin. Sir, you've talked a lot about CJAD C2 and the network and connecting sensors to shooters and be able to move data, and a lot about how you guys have worked the mesh network out at PC-21 and coming at PC-22. So has the Army looked at integrating 5G.mil and cloud computing into that, of how to help you move that database into the future for Project Convergence?
yeah, I think, we're taking a hard look at, I'm not a data scientist, so all those out there, come on and join the Army and help us out with that. But I'm learning a lot more about data than I ever thought I'd want to know. But that's the secret. How do we, what's the best, unified transport layer to bring those type things in? And I defer to our experts, but, the notion of a data fabric, because initially we're going down the road, at least from where I sat, was, we need standardized data, we need open architecture, and people like me that probably didn't know exactly what we were talking about would throw those around. But there's much more to that as we start to solve the problem. We're probably not going to have standardized data by everyone. So how do we take different types of data from different types of systems and be able to pass them back and forth? And one of the reasons we set up the Joint Systems Integration Lab at Aberdeen is to take those systems, and before we bring them out to Project Convergence, we actually put them in there and make sure they can, in a laboratory, you can pass data back and forth and figure out how to do that. And we have some, real smart people, and they may be I don't know whose they are. I don't ask who does it, but they're actually figuring out how to do that, and they're figuring out innovative ways. And when it comes to me, I don't care who does it. I don't care which company does it. I don't care, how we do it, as long as we get that done. And if you got innovative ways, that's what we're looking for. Because this is really important with our allies and partners. Because, ideally, we'd like everyone to have the same radios and same systems, but we're not. We got billions of dollars invested around the world in different types of communication systems. And I know there's some neat translators out there will do it. There's gateways, and the people are really smart about that. Each of them has, some challenges. So the better we can do this, I just want to be like my iPhone. I go someplace and I just turn it on and it works, and it's secure. And I won't have to figure it all. We got smart people that figure out how to do that. But that's where we're trying to go. And it's actually working. And we got smarter. The first time we went out to Project Convergence, we didn't do as much beforehand. We didn't really prep the battlefield, so to speak. And you find out at 115 degrees out at Yuma, that's probably not the time, you're working through some tough problem sets. Much better to work in the laboratory. So we actually made a requirement this time. Before you bring your stuff out to, PC-21, you got to bring it through the JSIL and make sure we can get it to work in a laboratory. Doesn't mean it's going to work out in 115 degrees, but we got a better shot if it does. So that's where we're going with that.
Please join me in welcoming the Chief.
All right, thank you all. Great being with you. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Sir.